Welcome to Season 2, Episode 22 of the Amplified Marriage Podcast. Today, we are talking about the grass is greener, and if it's greener on the other side, it could be artificial turf.
Welcome to another episode of Amplified Marriage. I'm Natalie.
I'm Brian.
Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you hear us say this every single podcast. Grab a tea, grab a coffee and a snack, get cozy and comfy. We're so glad that you joined us for our chat today.
Well, as you heard, we are going to be talking today about the grass is greener. And if you happen to miss our last podcast, it was all on the attitude of gratitude.
That's right.
Gratitude is the best attitude. I feel like I got a radio voice today.
Yeah, it's really deep.
It's really deep. It's what happens when you preach in the morning and your voice is like scratchy deep. It's weird. But today we're talking about grass is greener on the other side. Something we have been noticing is a general lack of dissatisfaction in a lot of couples and a lot of
we've even been there.
Yeah, we've been there for sure.
Yep.
Where you're just thinking about what's maybe past this. I remember when you were watching all the Housewives of Orange County.
I don't recommend that show. And if you are a fan of that, maybe just
chances
plug
are
your ears.
If you're a woman and you're watching it, your husband is suffering with some, maybe possibly with the attitude of, it was a weird period where I would come home and you would be like, why don't you make more money? I'm like, I'm sorry I don't make more money.
Yes, it really fostered a unrealistic
viewpoint.
Viewpoint. I mean, these people, looking at it now in a healthy spot, would I want to be anyone from the Housewives of Orange County? No.
They're done messed up.
Like, they are a messed up group of people. But the materialistic availabilities that they have because of all the money that they've got was just really enticing for me because we didn't have any money, right? And we could never just walk onto a car lot.
We was done broke.
Purchase a vehicle and pay cash for it, right?
Just because they could.
It really fostered an unhealthy viewpoint of you who was providing, but in my opinion, after watching that, like, you weren't
not
providing
enough
at all.
Yeah.
Right? So
apparently
it can be dangerous ground if you are filling yourself up with stuff like that.
So,
or not even, and I know we're going to get into this next bit here with rom-com fantasies, but books are also, they can also be really dangerous because it's a fantasy world, right? And you envision yourself in there and then look at your spouse instead of, the character that's like swooping the girls off their feet and all of that. And then you look at your spouse who's, picking his nose on the couch, maybe. I don't know. And it's just really not, it's not at all what you thought it would be. So it's really easy to go down that.
Right.
There's got to be something better out there.
Right. And so today we do want to start with this attitude that we see this rom-com fantasy. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting because you see in these movies where like it really started with Jerry Maguire when that whole thing at the end of the movie where it's like, you complete me, you had me at hello, where this idea that another person completes you so much that their absence means you cannot function.
Right.
Right. And when that doesn't happen, you actually begin to question whether or not you're even in the proper relationship because
it doesn't look like that.
It doesn't look like Jerry Maguire. It doesn't look like any rom-com fantasy that you had. It doesn't look like any one of those things. And so you begin to question, well, maybe if I would have held out longer, or maybe if she would be this way or he would be this way, or maybe if they did this, or maybe if they had that job. That cliche really comes up. I don't know how many times I've heard it in my lifetime, not just in relation to relationships or marriages or dating couples, but the grass is always greener on the other side.
That's right.
It's such a fallacy, and it's a super lie, in my opinion.
Big time. And it does not, if that's the trajectory that your thoughts are going down, I mean, it gets ugly.
Right.
Because anyone who's going to project their own insecurities or project how they're really feeling and the state of their current relationship onto someone else, like it's their fault.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even though, like, you've heard us say so many times, and Brian will say, oh, it was mostly me or whatever, or like he was saying it was mostly him that had the issue in our marriage. If you are looking at your spouse, you're looking at your partner and going, amen, like that, it is you. If you're pointing, the saying, if you're pointing your finger at someone, there are 3 more fingers pointing back at you. There's always 2 sides. Right. And so
absolutely
to be able to project these negative or these fantasy viewpoints and ideas without taking a solid look at why am I unhappy?
And because the grass is greener has been so overused and so kind of like the word when we say the word love. Like love in our culture means you love the Green Bay Packers. You love Starbucks. You love the movies. You love your car. You love your pets. You love your house. You love is such an overused word that it's taken away the meaning. Just like when we use the grass is greener on the other side.
It's true.
We say that just like casually, like without looking at the current grass that we're sitting in, the current state that we're in, and doing our best to improve that. We're like, well, I'm willing to go to put 100% of my effort into something that's across the fence and look over there and maybe put effort into that rather than looking at the situation I'm in with the person I love and the people that I'm with and say, I love them and I want to be with them, and actually watering that grass and putting effort into that relationship.
Exactly.
So we're taking effort away from the current situation and putting it on a future situation that doesn't even exist. Yes. In our mind, we're building it up like this is going to be some great thing. And so we start making plans for it and how this is going to happen and blah, blah, blah. But meanwhile, the relationship you're in is suffering.
That's right.
Right.
And your idea, like people have said to us, oh, like our strive is to have a marriage like yours. And I'm like, you don't want that.
If you knew what it was like.
You want what you currently see. That's the highlight reel. Right? But you
100%.
don't, I mean, we've been together for 22 and a half years. You don't want to walk that road that we had to walk to get to where we're at now. Right. We're still not arrived.
What you want is the healthy portion of a relationship.
Exactly. But you don't see the blood, sweat, and tears that went into the frustrations and the disappointments and the arguing and the bickering that went in our journey to get us to the place that we're at now, right? It's like Instagram. Nobody puts realistic things on. Well, maybe there is. I shouldn't just say nobody does. The majority of Instagram is all the highlight stuff. Nobody's going to put themselves with no makeup on there. And I am one of those people. Like, I don't want to have photos of me with no makeup on. I want to look my best, right? And like the rom-com, it gives a false idea of how you truly are doing and how you truly are feeling.
Right.
I mean, we could slap a photo of our family on Instagram and be all super duper happy and have just had a screaming match before you'd never know. No.
Right. And so with this grass is greener, it's like we did some research. It's an actual syndrome that people actually have. Mm-hmm. So what they feel in the moment, or people are like, and we felt this, is you don't feel any stability.
That's right.
Right. You don't feel any
There's
confidence, no security, confidence in the other person that they're doing their best for you in your present circumstances. Mm-hmm. Like, and then there's also like Natalie, who's a forward, she's a forward thinker when it comes to what could possibly go wrong.
Well, that was a nice way of putting it.
You're a forward thinker and all the things like bad that could happen.
That could go wrong. I'm prepared.
Yeah. You're prepared for the worst. Like you've heard about that episode or that podcast. But so Natalie, in her current present circumstances, would realize, hey, we're not stable. We're not emotionally connected. Yeah. We're not secure. And then she's also taking those moments and projecting them onto the future, because that's just how our personality works. Yeah. Like, what's it going to be like a year from now or 2 years from now? What if we had kids? And then the worst case scenario oftentimes comes out.
Yeah.
Now, the truth is that most of the time in our experience, I could say this safely, is that when people have a grass is greener problem happening in their life, an issue, oftentimes it isn't just about the relationships. It also becomes with their careers, what they're living with. And it's like you have that, was that scripture in the Bible, you can't serve two masters?
Yes. There's always one foot out the door.
Yeah. So you're not present with your current relationship and the things that in the situation that you're in. And and this isn't just like having a vision for the future. Right. That's
important.
That's important. But this isn't like when you have a grass is greener mentality, you're not thinking about
your
vision.
You're not vision. Oh, no, I was going to say visionizing.
That would be a Natalie word. That's for sure. And I think we should use that now.
Okay. So you're not visionizing.
Well, you're not visionizing. Excellent.
Potentially with your current partner or spouse
or situation that you're in.
You're looking to who or what can provide that gratification and that satisfaction that I feel like I'm missing.
And oftentimes, even from our own experience, this grass is greener mentality is based out of fear. It's a fear.
Yeah.
You have fear that you're being trapped, that you're going to be bored, that you're just going to lose your identity, or you're going to lose your personality, or you don't have a job, you don't have a house. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Maybe you're being oppressed in the relationship. There's lots of things that could possibly happen, but the trigger is going to be fear.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. And then what happens after the fear creeps in?
Right.
Then there's compromise.
Yeah.
So if you're fearing commitment, then compromising, or what you feel you're compromising, your desires or certain needs that you have, maybe your values for the sake of being unified with your spouse, can really feel like an oppressive sacrifice.
Or right. Well, and if you're in a relationship, you want the one that you're with to be supporting you in all of those things.
Right.
And you're working your values and your commitment and your needs, all that together to both work into that relationship. So you're moving forward together.
Right. Yes.
Where you don't feel like you're being oppressed.
But honestly, in a healthy relationship, nobody is in control.
Right.
Right. Like in our relationship, it's not me controlling everything, everything that I want, everything that I crave or value happening on my terms. Like there's another human being that is across from me that you have to take into consideration.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a perception that somewhere outside of my current relationship, somewhere outside of the chaos that might be happening now, there is that someone who will be able to fulfill all of these things for me, but I'm in control of it.
Right. Like, yeah. And like we know some couples that we've been coaching in the last while that they're now in crisis because of that.
Yep.
They're now in crisis thinking that what they have currently isn't good enough.
Yep.
And have pretty much forsaken the relationship and decided to go the direction they want. And there's children involved.
Yep.
And it's going to be hard and it's going to be miserable. And there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be really tough to deal with because instead of watering the grass that they had, they decided that what was on the other side was even better.
Yep.
So there's something that happens. There's this perception that everything we want, just like you said, everything we want, we crave, we need, all is on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually project that fantasy, like you projected what the Housewives
of Orange County.
Thank you. The Housewives, you projected what you were feeling in that moment onto me, and essentially tried to make me feel inadequate.
Yeah, as a provider,
and less than, because I wasn't doing, and that was a insecurity and a lack of. Maturity for sure. Yep. But you were projecting what you were feeling onto me, expecting me to feel the same thing.
Right. Because face it, we all want what we can't have, or we all want what we don't have.
Right.
And in that particular, that show was just such a tool to get me to see all the things. Well, I already knew what I didn't have.
Right.
And what I, possibly could never have. And it just made me furious.
Right.
Right. And so if you're always looking outside of your relationship, then there's a lack of, hey, so we talked about the oppressive sacrifice. If I'm looking to someone else, or I'm looking over the fence, let's say, to a brighter future that I'm in control of, then the sacrifice in my mind doesn't seem that oppressive.
Right.
Right? Rather than looking at my current situation and being present in the moment of what I'm actually dealing with, because the issue's you.
True.
Like,
okay.
I'm speaking for myself. The issue is me in this particular scenario. Nothing's going to change.
Right.
And if I'm fooling myself if I think that looking over the fence is going to change anything.
Yeah.
It's a false sense of control. Like for me.
I agree. And it's funny because even as we're talking about this, I think that we should change the cliche, the grass is only greener on the other side, to the grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it.
Amen.
Right? It's just tiring to always and exhausting to now you literally are putting emotional, mental, spiritual energy now into two different places instead of one.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
You're splitting yourself. You're separating yourself into this. Well, I want this. Instead of doing it with your partner, you're taking all of the vision, the visionizing. Is that right?
I think it was visionizing.
we're going to visionize, but you're taking all of that you could be doing with the person that you love and visionizing it together.
Yep.
Instead, you're splitting yourself with what currently is happening. And what ends up happening is the current relationship, the current environment takes the hit for your energy because what you think is better is over there. So that's where you're willing to put your energy. That's just human nature.
Yeah, you're striving for an illusion.
Right. And so the grass is greener and sometimes it may look like it and the grass really shiny. Does. It's shiny and new.
Think of springtime when you fertilize and you aerate and everything just comes up lush.
And your relationship oftentimes in the dating period, sometimes even into the early. Ours was not like that at all.
We did not have a honeymoon phase, but we've heard that there are honeymoon phases.
We heard this is a real thing that actually happens. We did have the honeymoon phase.
I feel like we're in a honeymoon phase now.
We had the love goggles on when we were dating. Yeah. And then we got married and immediately
and
the goggles.
The Jekyll and Hyde. Remember that podcast?
Yeah, the Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
But the thing is that most relationships start out in the honeymoon.
That's right.
And then what happens is then your love goggles begin to get cracks in them or your grass starts to show a little bit of wear and what was green now has
to get dull.
It gets a little bit dull and there's some flat patches and like it's just not the same as it was before.
That's right.
Because we think that when you have love goggles on, love literally at the beginning of your relationship will conquer all things most of the time. Right?
That's right. But I mean, love covers a multitude of sins.
Right.
The word says, right? And
but sometimes the love covering the multitude of sins doesn't survive contact with in-home living together with each other.
That's true. And there's a desire, when we're looking over the other side of the fence, there's a wish for our internal selves to be happy.
Right.
Unscathed, fully satisfied.
Fully known.
Yes. And if we're looking to, only God can fill that void. Like you will never be able to fill and complete me and leave me unscathed and leave me fully satisfied or happy. Like, it's just not possible for you. It's not possible for anybody.
No. And you complete me is a fool's game because like we even when I was preaching,
think you compliment me.
Absolutely. I was preaching today and it was one of those things. If you're so wrapped up into your job and your identity is in your job, you will use a job as a thing. You talk about your job, you love your job, the only thing you think about your job. And then one day, and your whole identity is your job. Like that's who you are. Like when you tell people, what do you do? For me, I could say, hey, I'm a pastor. What do you like to do for fun? I pastor. What do you do for a hobby? I pastor. Like it could become all consuming to me. And there's many, many people out there that's their identity. So what happens when that part of your identity is stripped away?
Exactly.
What happens if you're so invested into your spouse? We're not saying that they don't compliment you. They don't fill the roles in the relationship as they're supposed to. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is you can't find your end all be all life-giving life into your spouse because they could be taken away.
That's why the illusion is that it's somewhere else.
Yeah. And because when you start to feel the dullness of the grass, you're looking to get that fresh feeling you had when you just first started dating.
That's right. I mean, realistically, if we're talking about, the comparison of grass to relationships, and, if you've ever seen turf, and I mean, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Right. And
it doesn't look real, but it's perfect.
Right. But when they roll it out and they lay it and you do all the things and you allow it the chance to like really root into the ground and all of that, you don't want to walk on it.
Right.
Because there will be imperfections after that.
Right.
Right. So the grass is never going to be as shiny as when you first get it.
Right.
Right. It's never going to look like that again.
Right. And our job is to keep the grass that we have as green as humanly possible.
That's right.
Which sometimes takes a lot of work, takes a lot of outside help. And no matter what.
Can we just camp out on there? The outside help.
Yes.
If you are suffering, I mean, we are counseling advocates.
Yeah.
And we regret not going and seeking out counseling because of, again, another cliche that, it was almost taboo and it was almost shameful for anyone to admit they needed counseling.
Yep.
Well, we want to smash that thought process. If that's you. Professionals are there for a reason.
Right. It may take some time to find the right professional.
That's right.
But seek it.
Right. Like if you need to shop around, but there comes a point in your life where actually we know a couple that sought out counseling. Nothing was going amiss in the relationship. They sought it out as a preventative.
Yeah.
So they were being proactive, going, okay, in hearing other people talk in this, we can see some trouble spots. And so we're going to nip this in the bud before it turns into something big. Right. And I thought that was the greatest thing. I was like, what a testimony to other people. Mm-hmm. So resist the urge to feel shame or to be shamed if you are needing outside help. That's what it's there for.
No, and I do want to make a clarification in what we're saying. We're not saying that the grass is greener on the other side. If you're in an abusive relationship, like a healthy one, versus an abusive one. If you're in an abusive physically, emotionally, spiritually, they're abusing you, that's not a stay and try and grow the grass, especially if you've sought help for it.
Yeah.
There's a few things. We don't need to go through them all. We're not going to go through them, but you're going to know what is something that you want to water and what you're not.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
and so
we're not talking about abusive situations.
Right. And so there is some patterns in people's lives that we want to bring out, and I can actually identify with
so can I.
With a couple of them.
Yeah.
But the first one is patterns that kind of have a bit of a root in the grass is greener is repetition. Mm-hmm. I hate repetition. I hate doing the same thing over and over. If I was in a factory job, I would lose my marbles.
You would die.
I knew a guy that was just, he loved his job, got paid really well to flip boards. That's all he did. Yeah. He didn't want to be a manager. And he's like, because I want to spend time with my family and he's like, I don't need to have anything else. I can't flip boards for a living. Yeah. And we were good buddies. And I was like, it would drive me crazy. Repetition.
Yes.
There's a pattern in your life where you constantly, now Natalie has said in previous podcasts, or maybe not, but I go through this 2-year, as soon as I get a job, I'm happy with it for about 2 years. And then all of a sudden things start to go sideways because it's not what I want to keep doing. Oftentimes because the job gets kind of mundane and it ends up being the same thing over and over. And I've had to and the thing is I'm loyal. Right. But my attitude changes, my heart changes. I get irritable because I'm just doing something that is monotonous. I'm doing the same thing over and over. That's just me. That actually very much carried from the jobs that I was in into a relationship so much so that she's like, you better figure out whatever is going on. Find joy in your job.
That you are.
Find life in that job because you're making this miserable for me.
That's right. And again, I mean, I like routine. So for me, not that I could say that I would enjoy flipping boards, seeing as we're on that one, but I like the stability. I like knowing what my job is. I like knowing the parameters that I'm to operate in. And so for me, what you would think is monotonous and boring to me would be, this is following the guidelines or following the rules. Now, if you are that person that enjoys constant change, like you do enjoy change.
All the time, as much as
There's
possible.
There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But if your motivation for the constant change comes from the repetition of dissatisfaction, that's when you're in hot water.
Just being dissatisfied with life.
Yes.
That's very true. The next one is perfection. If you want to go from an abusive relationship to a positive functioning one, but it's a string of functioning relationships are never good enough, even the good ones, if you are finding good relationships and you're still jumping from place to place,
Yep.
like this is
Like
before
a
you get married,
fantasized
or
idea.
even if you're married, you've been married 4 times, because all that ends up happening is, and we don't ever, this is the thing about divorce. Oftentimes, for this case, say
Yep.
someone gets married because they thought grass was greener on the other side. They break up, whether, say there's kids involved. Well, now you are taking all of your current baggage, the stuff that you didn't deal with, even if it was an amicable divorce. Yep. I've seen amicable divorces, but you still carry the same baggage. You still have the same wounds. You still have the same things that you're dealing with, and you carry that to your next relationship unless it's dealt with. And most people, when they go from one divorce, and then move on to someone else, most of the time there's not a lot of people working on themselves. They just blame the other person, or there's a lot of, I'm from a divorced home.
Yeah.
There's a lot that happens inside those things, but you carry baggage from place to place. You don't deal.
You do. And there's never a perfect match.
Right.
Right. Again,
society tells us you got to find the one that completes you.
Right. The strive for perfection. You're going to be incredibly disappointed in your life if that's what you're striving to seek after.
Yeah. That's for sure. And the next one is
like
wanting to have your cake.
Saying, to have your cake and eat it too. I love that.
Here's the thing, is if you water the grass in the situation that you're in, you will be able to have your cake and eat it too.
Ooh, that's good. Exactly.
Enough said.
Right? But we talked earlier a little bit about the struggle of the compromise and feeling like it's an oppressive sacrifice. If you must have every want or need or stimulation in your life in order to function, then it's like the grass is never going to be green enough.
No.
Unless you're the only one on the grass.
Right.
Right? Because no one's going to be able to live up to that expectation.
Right. Which comes back to our very first episode ever is unmet expectations.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
You can, honestly, I do believe you can have your cake and eat it too, but you have to be willing to work on the current relationship that you're in.
That's right.
Right. The last one is ultimate dissatisfaction. If you're, and we even say this, are you ultimately dissatisfied with everything in your life? Or is there a part of it that you're like, you know what, I really think this could be better? Would you like to have a better job position, but you're happy with your relationship? Or you're unhappy with your relationship, but you have a great job and you're willing to work on your relationship. When we're saying ultimate dissatisfaction, have you ever been what I like to call been around a negative Nelly?
Yep.
Everything sucks. Mm-hmm. Everything is a problem. They complain about everything. Their job is terrible. The relationship is terrible. The kids are terrible. Their friends are terrible. The church is terrible. Yep. The Green Bay Packers, I don't even like the Green Bay Packers, but the Green Bay Packers are terrible. Everything is terrible. And they're dissatisfied with everything, and they will bring you down.
That's right.
Run from those people because they are life suckers.
Yes. And you become the company you hang out with.
Oh, boy, do you ever.
So if you think that maybe you're the negative Nelly.
If you can look into,
this is an illuminating moment for you, right?
If you can look into your friend group and you can't figure out which one of them is the negative Nelly, it might be you.
Right? But so then, and again, it's not too late. These are all tools in the tool belt.
To show you the pattern.
To show, exactly, right? It's not the end, and I guess this is just, I'm terrible, or this is never going to change, or whatever. It will. Sometimes it takes a little while, and sometimes you need this light bulb moment. And I'd like to think that every podcast is just another tool in your arsenal. Right.
And I think this leaving people before we close with a practical application of what we would do would be, if you know that you're struggling with this, the thing you need to do is go to your partner, your spouse, and just communicate that you're struggling with this.
Yes.
And just be like, look, I've really been struggling with being dissatisfied. I want more from our relationship. You have to eat your pride.
Yep.
Suck it up. If you're a man, suck it up and get in there and just tell your wife or your partner, your fiance, whoever, tell your partner that, hey, I'm struggling with this. I don't want to. I love you. And I want this to work, and I want this to be the best that we possibly can. But eat your pride, step up to the plate, man or woman, and just do what you got to do to make that relationship work, because you can have your cake and you can eat it too.
Right. It's just going to require effort.
It takes effort and energy and investment
and work, but it's worth it if you're both sharing the common vision.
Right. Absolutely. Right? You're visionizing it together.
That's what I was just going to say. Yes. If we leave you with one thing, visionize together.
That's going to go in the show notes. We're going to visionize our relationship together, right? We're
That's
just
true.
like, these are all like, we're talking about people that aren't in abusive relationships, aren't in relationships that where you need to get out. You need to get out. Yeah. We're talking about if you're in a relationship and you're just feeling dissatisfied, I would like to think that's actually okay. Like, as long as you're communicating it well and healthy and proper,
that's right.
It's okay to have times where you're just like, I want more out of this relationship.
Yep.
But what you do with that visionizing, you see what I did there?
Yep.
You do with that visionizing is what's going to differentiate between ultimately a healthy relationship.
Yes.
Or you seeing what you're trying to see what's on the other side of the fence.
Yeah. And nothing's going to change.
Right.
It's going like you're always going to be wanting. And then, there's this whole like, well, I can just jump back over the fence, but then you're just creating baggage in a stream of garbage and emotional distress that now you're having to pick up it's just way too messy.
You essentially dig your own hole.
Fertilize your own lawn.
Yeah. Fix your own grass on the grass that you're on.
Exactly.
We 100% believe that you can have the most healthy marriage that you possibly can.
Yeah. But I like what you said. It does boil down to communicating those needs. Like, are you wanting more intimacy with your spouse?
Right.
Communicate that.
Yeah.
Come up with a plan on how to accomplish that together, right? Are you wanting more time with your spouse? More quality time, more being present in the moment.
Right.
You fill in the blanks.
Absolutely.
Right? And we have. And there were some really ugly conversations. And there might be for you too, some ugly conversations. It might get ugly before it gets better. Your grass might, go brown before it gets better and before you can bring it to that lush green. It might just get
set on fire for a little while first before it can go back.
That's true.
All right.
But it can.
Yeah. And we're advocates to have the tough conversations, to have the communication that may not be the prettiest or the most but you need to communicate and talk about it.
Absolutely.
Right on. Well, here we're getting to this place where we're moving on to what we're wanting to end this with. But if you like this podcast, it means a lot when you actually get the opportunity to share it and let people know about the Amplified Marriage Podcast.
That's right.
You can follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. We do have a challenge that's coming up, but you have to listen to the podcast to see what it is.
Right.
If there's a topic or a question or anything you'd like us to discuss, you just have to email us or leave a voicemail at www.amplifiedmarriage.com.
At gmail.com. Oh, Lord.
Man, we just blew this whole thing. But as you've heard us say many times before, we believe that marriage can be reset,
refreshed,
recharged,
and restored.
Thanks so much for listening.
Talk to you soon.